My body is my choice. You can't demand anything from me, Trevor said, his voice cold as ice as he turned away from me in our bedroom. The words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me standing there in the silk nightgown I had carefully chosen for our 6-week anniversary. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of marriage, and my husband had not touched me once. My name is Justine Crawford, and at 27, I thought I had found my fairy tale ending when Trevor Caldwell proposed to me last spring in Denver, Colorado. The wedding had been everything I dreamed of, a beautiful ceremony at the prestigious Highlands Country Club, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated what they believed was the beginning of my happily ever after. But as I stood in our bedroom that night, watching my husband's rigid back as he pretended to read his phone, I realized that something was terribly, devastatingly wrong. "Trevor, we're married," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm your wife. I just want to understand why you won't even hold my hand, let alone—" "Don't finish that sentence," he snapped, finally turning to face me. His green eyes, once warm and loving during our courtship, now held nothing but annoyance. "I told you, my body belongs to me. Marriage doesn't give you ownership over it. You need to respect my boundaries." The word boundaries felt like a slap. During our 8-month courtship, Trevor had been affectionate, romantic even. He would pull me close during movies, kiss me goodnight after dates, and hold my hand as we walked through Washington Park. But the moment we returned from our honeymoon in Aspen, a honeymoon where he had claimed exhaustion every single night, everything changed. It was as if a switch had been flipped, transforming the man I married into a stranger who flinched whenever I came near him. "This isn't normal," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Married couples are intimate. They share a bed, they touch each other, Normal?" Trevor laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about normal? Normal is respecting your partner's choices. Normal is not pressuring someone into physical contact they don't want." I stared at him, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. His words were technically correct. Consent mattered, boundaries mattered. But something felt deeply wrong about the way he wielded these concepts like weapons against his own wife. The Trevor who had courted me, who had whispered sweet words about our future together, who had seemed desperate to marry me, had vanished completely. As he stalked out of the bedroom, leaving me alone with my confusion and growing suspicion, I made a decision that would change everything. Something was very wrong with my marriage, and I was going to find out what. The next morning, I sat at our kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, as Trevor moved around the kitchen with mechanical precision. He had always been organized, but lately his routines felt almost obsessive. He checked his phone constantly, stepped outside to take calls, and had developed a habit of disappearing for hours without explanation. "I'm going to visit my sister in Phoenix this weekend," I announced, watching his reaction carefully. Trevor's hand froze on his coffee mug for just a moment before he nodded. "That sounds nice. How long will you be gone?" "Just the weekend. Why? Will you miss me?" I asked, testing the waters. He shrugged without looking at me. "I'll manage." The casual dismissal of my absence should have hurt, but instead, it confirmed what I had been suspecting. Trevor seemed relieved whenever I left the house. During our courtship, he had hated when business trips separated us even for a day. Now, he practically encouraged my absence. I studied his profile as he scrolled through his phone. Trevor was undeniably handsome, tall, with thick dark hair and those striking green eyes that had first caught my attention at a coffee shop downtown. He worked as a financial consultant, or so he claimed, though I had never met any of his colleagues or clients. When I asked about his work, he would give vague answers about confidentiality and client privacy. "Trevor," I said carefully, "I was thinking we should see a marriage counselor. This distance between us, it's not healthy." His head snapped up, and for a moment, I saw something flash in his eyes. Panic, maybe, or fear. But it was gone so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. "We don't need counseling," he said firmly. "We just need time to adjust to married life. Not everyone falls into perfect rhythm immediately." "It's been 6 weeks," I reminded him. "6 weeks is nothing in the scope of a lifetime together," he replied, but his voice sounded rehearsed, as if he had practiced this response. That afternoon, after Trevor left for what he claimed was a client meeting, I did something I had never imagined myself doing. I searched through his things. Not out of jealousy, but out of a growing conviction that the man I married was keeping secrets from me. His home office was meticulously organized, almost suspiciously so. His desk drawers contained only basic office supplies, his filing cabinet held generic financial documents, and his computer was password protected. But as I was about to give up, I noticed something odd. In the trash can, partially hidden beneath other papers, was a receipt from a flower shop in Las Vegas. The date was from 3 weeks ago, when Trevor claimed to be at a financial conference in Salt Lake City. The receipt was for a dozen red roses, and written on the back in Trevor's handwriting was a phone number with a Nevada area code. My hands trembled as I photographed the receipt with my phone. Whatever Trevor was hiding, I was going to find out. The man I married was living a lie, and I deserved to know the truth. That evening, I sat in my car outside the office building where Trevor claimed to work, watching through the lobby windows. I had called his supposed workplace earlier, asking to speak with Trevor Caldwell, only to be told that no one by that name was employed there. The security guard I spoke with was apologetic but firm. He had worked there for 5 years and had never heard of Trevor. When Trevor's car pulled into the parking lot at 6 p.m., I slumped down in my seat, watching as he sat in his vehicle for several minutes, talking animatedly on his phone. Even from a distance, I could see his body language was completely different from the cold, distant man he became at home. He was smiling, laughing even, gesturing with his free hand like he was having the most wonderful conversation of his life. After 20 minutes, he ended the call and walked into the building, not to an office, but to the coffee shop on the ground floor. He ordered a drink and sat at a corner table, pulling out his laptop. For the next hour, he appeared to be working, but something about the scene felt staged, performative. When he finally left, he threw away what looked like fake paperwork and drove home. I followed at a safe distance, my mind racing. The man I married was not who he claimed to be. The question was, what was he hiding, and why had he married me? When I arrived home 10 minutes after him, Trevor was already in the shower. I seized the opportunity to examine his phone, which he had left charging on the nightstand. It was locked, but I remembered him entering his passcode once, our wedding date. My heart pounded as I typed in the numbers, and miraculously, the phone unlocked. What I found made my blood run cold. Text messages with someone named Amanda, filled with intimate exchanges and declarations of love. Photos of Trevor with a woman I didn't recognize, both wearing wedding rings, standing in front of what appeared to be a courthouse. The most recent message, sent just hours ago, read, "Missing you, baby. Can't wait to see you this weekend. This whole situation is almost over." The shower was still running when I forwarded the most damning photos and messages to my own phone, then carefully placed Trevor's phone back where I found it. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip my own device as I stared at the evidence of what appeared to be Trevor's double life. When Trevor emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel and humming softly, I was sitting on the bed, pretending to read a magazine. He seemed genuinely happy for the first time in weeks, and now I understood why. He was living 2 lives, and apparently, his life with me was the one he wanted to end. "I think I'll turn in early tonight," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Good idea," Trevor replied, and I didn't miss the relief in his voice. "Sweet dreams, Justine." As I lay in the dark, listening to his even breathing beside me, I made a decision that would shatter both our lives. Tomorrow I would contact a lawyer and find out exactly who I had married. The law office of Patricia Henley was located in downtown Denver, occupying the 15th floor of a gleaming high-rise with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains. I had chosen Patricia specifically because of her reputation for handling complex divorce cases. But as I sat across from her mahogany desk, sharing the evidence I had gathered, I realized I was dealing with something far more sinister than a simple marital breakdown. "Justine," Patricia said, her voice grave as she studied the photos on my phone. "What you're showing me suggests potential bigamy. This isn't just grounds for divorce. This could be criminal." The word bigamy hit me like a physical blow. I had suspected an affair, maybe even that Trevor had married me for financial reasons, but the possibility that he was already married to someone else had never crossed my mind. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We have a marriage certificate. We were married by a licensed officiant at the country club. There were over 200 witnesses." Patricia nodded grimly. "Your marriage is legally valid on your end, which makes Trevor's situation extremely problematic if he's already married to someone else. Bigamy is a felony in Colorado, punishable by up to 6 years in prison." She reached for her phone. "I'm going to recommend we hire a private investigator immediately. We need to determine if this Amanda person is actually Trevor's wife, and if so, when and where they were married. If their marriage predates yours, then your marriage is void, and Trevor has committed a serious crime." Within hours, I found myself in the office of Detective Michael Torres, a former police officer turned private investigator who specialized in marriage fraud cases. He was a compact man in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a direct manner that immediately put me at ease. "I've seen cases like this before," he said, making notes as I recounted my story. "The pattern is usually the same. The perpetrator researches wealthy targets, courts them quickly, rushes into marriage, and then tries to access their finances before disappearing. The lack of intimacy is a red flag. Many of these fraudsters avoid physical contact because it complicates their exit strategy." "But Trevor seemed so genuine when we were dating," I protested. "He was romantic, attentive. He seemed to really care about me." Detective Torres looked at me with something approaching sympathy. "These people are skilled manipulators, Justine. They research their targets extensively, learn their interests, their backgrounds, their vulnerabilities. They become whoever they think you want them to be." He pulled out a contract. "I need you to understand that what we might discover could be very painful. Are you prepared for the possibility that everything about your relationship was a lie?" I thought about the past 6 weeks of confusion and rejection, about the cold stranger sharing my bed, about the phone calls and mysterious absences. Whatever the truth was, it couldn't be worse than the uncertainty I was living with. "I need to know," I said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Detective Torres nodded and began outlining his investigation plan. He would start by running comprehensive background checks on Trevor Caldwell, searching marriage records in multiple states, and attempting to identify and locate Amanda. He would also investigate Trevor's claimed employment and financial history. "One more thing," he said, handing me a small recording device. "If Trevor makes any admissions or threats, we need them on record. Colorado is a one-party consent state, so you can legally record conversations you're part of without his knowledge." As I left the detective's office, the small recording device felt heavy in my purse. I was about to embark on an investigation that would either save my marriage or destroy it completely. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of my situation instead of being a passive victim of Trevor's manipulations. That evening, I watched Trevor across the dinner table, studying his face for any sign of the man I thought I had fallen in love with. He seemed relaxed, almost cheerful, making small talk about his day while I mechanically ate my pasta. Every smile, every casual comment, every moment of apparent normalcy now felt like an elaborate performance designed to deceive me. When he excused himself to take a phone call in his office, I turned on the recording device and followed him, positioning myself outside the door. "I know, baby. I miss you too." Trevor's voice carried through the thin office door, tender and loving in a way I hadn't heard since our honeymoon. This whole situation is more complicated than I expected, but I promise it'll be over soon. I pressed closer to the door, my heart hammering as I listened to what was clearly an intimate conversation with another woman. No, she doesn't suspect anything, Trevor continued. She's actually making it easier by pulling away herself. I think she's planning to file for divorce, which would solve all our problems. Once the papers are signed, I can access the trust fund and transfer everything before she realizes what happened. The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach lurch. He was talking about me like I was nothing more than a business transaction, a problem to be solved. The prenup was a stroke of genius, he continued. She was so in love she barely read it. If she files for divorce within the first year, she gets nothing, but I get half of any assets she brought into the marriage. That includes the trust fund her grandmother left her. I had to grip the doorframe to keep from collapsing. The prenuptial agreement Trevor had insisted on, claiming it would protect both our interests, was actually designed to rob me blind. He had manipulated me into signing away my own inheritance. "I love you too, Amanda," Trevor said, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "Tell me about your day. How was work?" For the next 10 minutes, I listened to Trevor have the kind of loving, attentive conversation I had desperately craved from him. He asked about Amanda's job as a nurse in Las Vegas, remembered details about her colleagues, made plans for their weekend together. He was everything to her that he refused to be to me. When he finally ended the call, I crept back to the living room and turned off the recording device, my hands shaking as I processed what I had just learned. Trevor hadn't just married me while already married to someone else. He had orchestrated an elaborate fraud designed to steal my inheritance. The prenup, his rejection of intimacy, even his encouragement of my independence, were all part of a calculated plan to rob me and disappear. The next morning, while Trevor was supposedly at work, Detective Torres called with his preliminary findings. "I have good news and bad news," he said. "The bad news is that Trevor Caldwell married Amanda Wilson in Las Vegas 8 months ago, 2 months before he proposed to you. Their marriage is fully legal and documented." My worst fears were confirmed, but Detective Torres continued. "The good news is that this makes your case straightforward. Trevor committed bigamy when he married you, and the evidence you recorded last night proves intent to commit marriage fraud. We have enough to file criminal charges and void your prenup based on fraud." "What happens now?" I asked, feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what I had learned. "Now we set a trap," Detective Torres said. "Based on the conversation you recorded, Trevor is planning to access your trust fund soon. We need to catch him in the act. Are you willing to let this play out a little longer to gather more evidence?" I thought about the man who had swept me off my feet with romantic gestures and promises of forever, who had turned out to be a criminal using me for my money while loving someone else. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but beneath the pain was something harder and more determined. "Yes," I said firmly. "Let's catch this bastard." Detective Torres had been thorough in setting up surveillance, but what he discovered over the next week exceeded even his expectations. Trevor wasn't just a bigamist. He was part of a larger pattern of marriage fraud that had been going on for years. "We've identified at least 3 other women in different states who married men matching Trevor's description," Detective Torres explained during our meeting at Patricia's office. "Same methodology, whirlwind courtship, quick marriage, access to finances, then disappearance. We think Trevor and Amanda work as a team." The surveillance photos he showed me were devastating. Trevor and Amanda at dinner in Las Vegas, holding hands and laughing. Trevor entering and leaving an apartment that was clearly their shared home. Most damning of all, photos of them at a bank, where Amanda waited in the car while Trevor went inside with what appeared to be financial documents. "He's been using your marriage certificate and the forged documents to establish himself as your legal husband with financial institutions," Patricia explained. "The plan seems to be to drain your accounts and then file for divorce under the prenuptial agreement, claiming you were unfaithful or abandoned the marriage." "How is that possible?" I asked. I would have noticed money missing from my accounts. Detective Torres pulled out another folder. He's been more sophisticated than that. He's opened new accounts using your social security number and marriage certificate, then applied for lines of credit against your trust fund. He hasn't touched your existing accounts yet because that would trigger immediate alerts, but he's created a shadow financial identity that he can drain all at once. The scope of the deception was breathtaking. Trevor had been planning this for months, possibly even before we met. Every romantic gesture, every declaration of love, every moment of apparent happiness had been calculated to manipulate me into the perfect position to be robbed. "There's something else," Detective Torres said, his expression grim. "Amanda isn't just his wife. She's his sister." The room spun around me. "What?" "Amanda Wilson was born Amanda Caldwell. They've been running marriage fraud schemes together for at least 5 years. She provides legitimacy to his operations by playing the role of the devoted wife back home, while he targets wealthy women in other states." I felt physically sick. The intimate phone calls I had overheard, the declarations of love, the romantic photos, it was all part of an incestuous criminal partnership that made my skin crawl. Patricia leaned forward. "Justine, we have enough evidence to destroy them both. Trevor will face federal charges for mail fraud, wire fraud, bigamy, and identity theft. Amanda will be charged as an accomplice, but we need to catch them in the act of actually accessing your funds." "How do we do that?" Detective Torres smiled grimly. "We give them what they want. You're going to file for divorce just as Trevor hopes, but instead of using his prenup to rob you, we're going to use it to trap him." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, playing the role of the heartbroken wife who just wanted out of the marriage. Trevor would feel confident that his plan was working, and would move quickly to access the financial accounts he had set up. Federal agents would be waiting for him. "Are you ready for this?" Patricia asked. "Once we set this in motion, there's no going back. Trevor will be arrested, and the truth about your marriage will become public record." I thought about the past 2 months of confusion and rejection, about the elaborate lies and manipulation, about the trust fund my grandmother had left me being used as bait in a criminal scheme. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's end this charade once and for all." The Denver County Courthouse was bustling with activity on the morning I filed for divorce, but I felt strangely calm as I walked up the steps with Patricia beside me. Detective Torres had positioned himself across the street, ready to alert the federal agents once Trevor took the bait. I had served Trevor with divorce papers the night before, playing the part of the devastated wife who couldn't handle the distance in our marriage any longer. His reaction had been perfect. Surprise, hurt, and then resigned acceptance that made my skin crawl with its falseness. "I'm sorry it's come to this," he had said, pulling me into what I now recognized as a calculated embrace. "I know I haven't been the husband you deserved. Maybe some time apart will help us both figure out what we really want." The recording device in my pocket had captured every lying word. Now, as Patricia filed the paperwork that would officially dissolve my sham marriage, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Torres. "He's moving. Entered First National Bank downtown with Amanda. Federal agents in position." My heart raced as I imagined Trevor finally making his move, probably feeling confident that his plan had worked perfectly. He thought he was about to walk away with my inheritance while leaving me with nothing but a fraudulent prenup and a broken heart. "It's done," Patricia said, handing me copies of the divorce filing. "According to Colorado law, he has 30 days to respond, but something tells me he won't get the chance." My phone buzzed again. "Package delivered. Both subjects in custody. You can go home, Justine. It's over." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The man who had manipulated and lied to me, who had planned to rob me and disappear, was finally facing the consequences of his crimes. The arraignment hearing was held 2 weeks later in federal court, and I sat in the gallery watching as Trevor and Amanda were led into the courtroom in orange jumpsuits and shackles. Trevor's confident composure had completely crumbled. His face was pale, his hands shook, and he kept looking around the courtroom like he couldn't believe where he had ended up. The defendants Trevor James Caldwell and Amanda Marie Caldwell are charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and bigamy, the prosecutor announced. The government alleges that the defendants operated a criminal enterprise targeting wealthy women for fraudulent marriages designed to steal their assets. When Trevor's eyes found mine across the courtroom, I saw the exact moment he realized that I had known about his scheme all along. The shock on his face was quickly replaced by something closer to panic as the full weight of his situation hit him. "Your Honor," Trevor's court-appointed attorney said, "my client maintains his innocence and requests bail consideration." The prosecutor stood immediately. "Your Honor, Mr. Caldwell is a flight risk who has demonstrated a pattern of creating false identities and fraudulent financial relationships. The government requests he be held without bail." Amanda sat beside him, tears streaming down her face as she realized their criminal partnership was over. The intimate phone calls, the romantic photographs, the elaborate deception that had been their livelihood. It was all evidence now, proof of a disturbing criminal conspiracy that would put them both in prison for years. The judge's voice was stern as he denied bail for both defendants. "The evidence presented suggests a sophisticated criminal enterprise that poses a continued danger to the community. Both defendants will be remanded to custody pending trial." As the bailiffs led Trevor away, he looked back at me one final time, his face a mask of defeat and disbelief that his perfect plan had destroyed him completely. Trevor Caldwell received a 12-year federal sentence for his role in the marriage fraud conspiracy, while Amanda received 8 years for her part as an accomplice. The investigation revealed they had stolen nearly $2 million from victims across 6 states, money that was recovered and returned to the women they had targeted. Their criminal enterprise collapsed completely when other victims came forward, inspired by my case to seek justice for their own experiences with the siblings' manipulative schemes. Trevor's reputation was permanently destroyed when media coverage made him notorious as one of the most calculating marriage predators in recent memory, ensuring he would never again be able to manipulate vulnerable women seeking genuine love. I celebrated my legal victory quietly, having dinner with my sister and close friends who had supported me through the investigation and trial. Looking back on my journey from confused newlywed to determined survivor, I realized that Trevor's betrayal, as devastating as it was, had taught me to trust my instincts and fight for myself when something felt wrong. The revenge I had sought wasn't just about punishing him. It was about reclaiming my power and ensuring that no other woman would fall victim to his lies.